Welcome to the Certitude of the Catholic Faith. I'm John Veneri, and we have been going through some discussions regarding the theory of evolution within the context of the first article of the Creed. I believe in God the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. And I've said a number of times already that the theory of evolution is the number one reason why many people no longer accept the literal account of Genesis. But as we've shown in the previous programs, there is no real evidence for evolution. Certainly not enough evidence for us to reject one word of Genesis. This is the final program we're going to do about evolution, and what I want to do actually is not so much talk about evolution, but talk about one of the consequences of evolution. And it is the belief that animals actually possess intelligence. We're going to take a look at that. Because what does evolution do? It kind of blurs the distinction between man and animal. If man, according to the evolution framework, is nothing more than a highly developed animal, then it stands to reason that animals are simply underdeveloped humans. So that distinction between man and animal, between brute and human, is blurred. Now, it's going to be a lot to take in one sitting. Okay, we're going to do this, cover this in one program. And I'm going to be relying on the work of three great Thomists: Dr. Raphael Waters, Thomistic philosopher, Dr. Dennis Bonnet, Thomistic philosopher, and Father Austin Woodbury, a genius of a Thomistic philosopher and theologian. I will say, too, what I'm going to say might sound strange, and yet, if we had a truly Catholic education, none of this would sound strange, just because I'm going to be giving to you the basics, the distinctions that have been in existence for 2,500 years through Aristotle and 800 years through St. Thomas. Now, I want to start by, since I'm going to be doing this within the framework of the philosophy of Aquinas, I want to talk a little bit about the primacy of Thomistic philosophy, that Thomistic philosophy is the philosophy of the Church. And the popes, pretty much since the time of St. Thomas, have taught so. Leo XIII, he says, "This point is vital, that bishops expend every effort to see the young men destined to be the hope of the Church," in other words, studying for the priesthood, "should be imbued with the holy and heavenly doctrine of the angelic doctor." Leo XIII. Pius X, very important quote, "But we warn teachers," and this is in his encyclical against modernism, "but we warn teachers to bear in mind that a slight departure from the teaching of Aquinas, especially in metaphysics, is detrimental. As Aquinas himself says, a slight error in the beginning is a great error in the end." The 1970 Code of Canon Law mandated Thomistic philosophy for students in the seminary. "Let professors handle the study of rational philosophy and theology and the education of students in these disciplines utterly according to the conceptualization, doctrine, and principles of the angelic doctor, and religiously cleave thereto." We don't only learn it, we accept it and cleave to it. Pius XI, quote, very nice quote, "Just as it was said of old to the Egyptians in the time of famine, 'Go to Joseph, so they should receive a supply of corn to nourish their bodies,' so to those who now are in the quest of truth we say, 'Go to Thomas, that they may ask from him the food of solid doctrine, of which he has an abundance to nourish their souls unto eternal life.'" I could quote the popes, many popes, Pius XII, saying the same thing, that the greatest stress must be on Thomistic philosophy. So from here, then, we're going to go into kind of the differences between animals and humans. Because humans have intellect and will, but I'm arguing, based on the teaching of Aquinas and Aristotle, that animals do not. But we know that animals can do amazing things. They can be trained. Why is this? How do they do this? Well, the animals operate, first of all, they have the vegetative life, which is nutrition. They nourish themselves. Growth, they start small and grow. And they generate. That's what plants do. That's what animals do. That's what we do. We all have vegetative life. But animals have what's called sensate life. And what sensate life means is they have, as we do, 5 external senses. They see, they hear, they touch, they smell. Well, They have the sense of smell, though they smell sometimes, and they have the sense of taste. Okay? But this is not all. They also have what is called the 4 internal senses. I'm going to name them and then we'll discuss them. They have sense consciousness, they have imagination, they have what's called an estimative sense, and sensitive memory. Now, we have all that too, but animals have only that. And that's what they operate on. The sense consciousness, or it's also been called by St. Thomas, the common sense. The 5 external senses are fed into us and are processed in a way in one central location, as it were, which is a common sense, or the universal sense. It's the one that processes what the sensory activity. The storehouse of that is the imagination. Images. Images can come to our mind that we got from external stimulus when they're not even there. Now, animals have imaginations too. Anyone who has a dog has seen the dog sleeping, and the dog is dreaming. We've seen that. The dog is, he has imagination. The images are playing in his mind, and the images came in from his 5 senses through the common sense, through the sense consciousness. Now, animals have 2 more internal senses, as we do, but 2 more internal senses. They have what's called an estimative sense. An estimative sense is it knows something as pleasing or harmful. They know that that sunny spot in the rug is warm, and they lie in it. They know that fire is hot, and they retreat from it. They have an estimative sense which tells them things are pleasurable or harmful, and then the storehouse for that is what is called sensitive memory, that they remember what is pleasing or harmful. They remember. Now, the animals know things through the operation of these organic senses. The 5 external senses, the 4 internal senses, and everything they do then is based on what's called an association of images. They can line up these singulars in their memory and then use it as a basis for activity. They have sense memory, they have imagination. All of that works together. A good trained philosopher could probably sit here and talk to you for 2 hours on exactly the mechanism of how that works. I'm not going to give you the how, I'm just telling you what it is. Now, animals, as we know, have highly developed sensory capacity, more than humans. And then they're designed this way because they are dependent on their senses. They don't depend on intellect and will because they don't have it, but they have a highly developed sense. For example, that's why we have drug-sniffing dogs and not drug-sniffing humans. If they tried, we would be a failure. We don't have the faculty for it. They have much more highly attuned faculties, sense faculties, than we do. And this is why, because of these 5 external senses, the 4 internal senses working together, this is why animals are trainable, especially those with a better organic aptitude, such as cats, such as dogs, such as monkeys, such as apes. It's an amazing thing. Through the operation of the organic senses, along with association of images, sense memory, imagination, what animals can be trained to do. And we see this too. First of all, we can train an animal to do something for the sake of a reward. Most of the things that are done with apes, even teaching them American Sign Languages, is done for the sake of a reward. They don't do it on their own. They don't do it because they want to learn. It's a trained stimulus and a response. And we see it too with our own pets. I had a cat. I had a cat for 10 years. And we used to serve him cat food. We would open the can in the mechanical can opener that we had on the nailed to the wall there. And when you open that can of cat food, the cat would remember, sensitive memory, pleasurable, it would remember the food and run. But it would also run if we opened a can of pineapples or if we opened a can of beans. It was the sense memory and a response. The same cat, if it was hungry, when we opened the refrigerator door, that cat would run and go like this up on the door, because that's where we store the food. The cat had the association of images, he had sense memory, and he had the estimative sense of something that is pleasurable. The dog also it's not just taste. The dog will respond to sounds. Anyone who has a dog knows that all you have to do is start to say to him, want to go out? Want to go out? And when you say that and then take the dog out, very soon the dog associates that sound, want to go out, with going out. And sometimes you can even train them to get their leash because they've made all those association of images. And most of the time, as I said, with animals, that requires a reward. It's something that is done for food. Dogs, you know, too, they have that estimative sense along with the sensitive memory. A little boy in the neighborhood who's mean to the dog, who kicks a dog, when the dog sees him, depending on the temperament of the dog will either cower when that little boy comes into the room, or the dog will start to snap. The dog has the sense, he has the imagination, the sensitive memory, the estimative sense, the association of images. Okay? So this is really, when we're training an animal and we see them do amazing things, it's not the operation of intelligence, it is the operation of a complex and sophisticated sensory and organic structure of the 5 external senses and the 4 internal senses. But animals operate on sense only. It's very important to keep in mind. They operate on sense and they operate on instinct. Instinct and senses. Dr. Raphael Waters, magnificent professor of Thomistic philosophy, he's dead now, he always told us in class, never trust an animal. Never trust an animal, because the animal is an animal first. What we do with animals is we anthropomorphize them. We humanize them. People have dogs and they come home from work and the dog looks at them and the person says, oh, and that dog looked at me and it was thinking, well, where have you been all day? Well, we humanize the dog, but the dog's not thinking that because the dog doesn't think. This is what we do. This is what animal researchers do. They transmit onto the dog, well, if I was a dog, or if I was a porpoise, or if I was an ape, this is what I'd be thinking. Dr. Waters told a true story of a young woman in her 20s named Kathleen, who is in Australia. Dr. Waters was from Australia. And they came upon, as you do in Australia, he came upon a big kangaroo. Kangaroo in the wild. And Kathleen went up to the kangaroo, and the kangaroo went up to Kathleen, and she started boxing with this kangaroo. And the kangaroo started boxing back. And Kathleen said, oh, look, he likes me. He's playing with me. Look, he likes me. And Dr. Waters said, Kathleen, get back. Get back. Because you might think that the animal likes you and is playing with you, but all that animal has to have a sense of that you are a threat. Here's what the kangaroo will do. Dr. Waters says it'll rock back on its tail. These huge feet and claws will come out, and it'll rip you open. And it'll do it like that. Bam! See, this is why we can't assume that animals are doing what they think we're doing. We can't assume what they're thinking because, as I said, they don't think. With their stories of dogs suddenly changing on their owners. I know somebody who had 2 Doberman Pinschers. They were the great dogs. He said they were wonderful. Well, one day the dogs got into a fight with each other, and he tried to break it up, and he ended up getting attacked, and then he got rid of the dogs. There's a famous, I love this story, famous chimpanzee named Washoe. I don't know if anybody here heard of that. It was taught to do amazing things. I mean, I guess it was in scientific journals. It was kind of an icon of animal intelligence. Well, the chimp had an encounter with a psychologist named Dr. Carl Pribram from Georgetown, and Washoe, something spooked the chimp, and Washoe actually bit Pribram's finger off. He bit the finger off. Now, this was an embarrassment because Washoe was 15 years old at the time, highly trained, kind of a poster chimp of animal intelligence, but still an animal, still operating on instinct. Dr. Bonnet says, I've had university students that didn't like what I said, but none of them ever bit my finger off. But even animal researchers, as I said, they anthropomorphize. Now, Dr. Dennis Bonnet, in his book Origin of Species and also in his classes on philosophical psychology, he's done tremendous amount of work in what's called ape language studies. Even with the American Sign Language, apes are never really taught true language because they don't know the meaning of what they say. It's just an association of images, sensory objects in the here and now. This takes a tremendous amount of training. This does not mean, though, in the wild that animals do not communicate. Animals do have a form of communication, but as Dr. Waters says, these are always passion sounds. And they're about two things, if I could say this. What Dr. Woodbury says, they're always about two things, eaties and sexies. It's all about food and also reproduction. They do communicate, but that's what it's about. Now, animals have, just as we have, what's called a concupiscible appetite and an irascible appetite. And I'll just give the example. A concupiscible appetite is when you wave the steak over top of your German Shepherd. That dog will, the dog will just be at it. The dog's not going to say, oh, steak again, I'm a little tired of that. Can't you give me some sushi or something? No, the dog is going to be, and he's just going to be lunging at this steak. It's the concupiscible appetite, the desire for the good, that's driving them towards the good. So then what's the irascible appetite? Well, think about what happens to you when you throw that steak down to your German Shepherd and he starts champing on it, and then you try to take it away. That little doggy is not your little pet doggy anymore. He will attack. Irascible appetite is fighting for the good. Fighting for the good. You can't reason with your dog at that point. Now, as far as the training, as I said, the training of animals takes a tremendous amount of time and effort. The animals don't really get past what the trainer teaches them. They never make the progress, and they usually will revert to their basic animal state without training. If you teach the trick to get food, then that's the response. Do the trick or do the sign language and you get food. But animal researchers found that if they just throw them the food and then ask them to do the trick, the animal just ignores them. There's no more games, right? It's all an association of images through training. Dr. Henry Heidegger, it's a different Heidegger from the problematic philosopher. He's been called the world's leading authority on human-animal communications. And he claims that when animals talk, that is communicate, even if they learn American Sign Languages, he examined mountains and mountains of data on this. And he says that no animal has ever talked about the past or future events. It's because the animal only lives in the present. To talk about past or future requires abstraction, reflection. Animals don't have that. They only live in the present. Animals focus on, as Dr. Burnett says, immediate, concrete, sensible objects. There are people who try to compare animal training with small children, but there is a vast difference, an infinite difference. Because with animals, you train them something and they do the same thing, they never progress, all right? But the child, if you teach him how to talk, he just doesn't stay there. Once he has the mechanism, he doesn't shut up. And then what you get is, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? And then, Daddy, why are you shaving? Daddy, why do you have that hammer? Daddy, why are you there? Where are we going? When do we eat? All this curiosity, which is a manifestation of intellect, you never see that with an animal. There's a wonderful story of an ape that was put in a cage. It's a true story. Put in a cage, and they suspended a banana, and they gave him a box and a long stick. And the ape went in there, and it was throwing itself around, trying to get that banana, and through just the constant work of it all, the ape did work out that you put the box on the floor, you step up on the box, whack it with the stick, and the banana comes down. And then the imagination, the sensitive memory, it remembered that, and it would do it repeatedly. So the animal researchers removed the box and then put a piece of cardboard in. And what did the ape do? It grabbed the cardboard, stood on the cardboard, and swung the stick to the banana. See, it didn't know the concept of what it was doing. It had no concept of height. It only had this association of images. Now, we have to go through this quickly, I see. No matter what you say about animal intelligence, even when you're trying to say the animals don't have intelligence, you will always be hit with anecdotal data from people. Because people get very emotional about this. My dog does this, my cat does this, my chimp does this. Well, Dr. Austin Woodbury, Father Austin Woodbury, he gave 4 positive demonstrations of the non-intelligence of apes or animals. These are 4 necessary formal effects of intellect. In other words, if you have intellect, you will have to manifest this. And the 4 things that you should manifest is, I'm going to name them first, and then we'll go through them one by one. First, intellect manifests itself in, first, true speech. Second, genuine progress. Third, knowledge of relations, that is, understanding a means and an end. And fourth, knowledge of immaterial objects. We have to go through these quickly. First, true speech. Left to themselves, animals do not develop speech. As I said earlier, all the sounds are passion sounds. Even if a chimp lives in a house with people, it does not naturally pick up speech. It lives as a chimp. He has to be trained by certain stimulus and association of images to give certain signs for certain things. Parrots, too, they have the matter of speech. I want a cracker. Matter of speech, but they don't have actual speech. Second, if you have intellect, you should make genuine progress. Now, apes learn from imitation, from experience, from training, but they don't have the self-reflection that's required for true progress. And it's not only true of apes, it's true of all animals. A beaver always builds his dam the same way. He is programmed to do this. He doesn't build it a different way from time to time. Birds always build their nests the same way. And even people who study birds can tell that's a robin's nest, that's a sparrow's nest, that's an eagle's nest. I don't know the difference, but there are people who are. But the bird never says, you know, this year I think I'm going to design my nest according to a Tudor style. Or maybe I'll introduce a little Gothic on the side, or maybe some little Bauhaus modern based on Corbusier and Gropius. No, they don't have progress. They do it the same way because it's instinctive. They don't invent things such as carriages, or simple things like bows and arrows, or light bulbs. They need the ability of self-reflection. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I want to do. Here's what I've done in the past. How can I do it better? They don't have the ability to build better, to progress, to build the better mousetrap. Now, the third is knowledge of relations, and that is knowledge of a means as a means and an end as an end. They only have what Dr. Burnett calls sense knowledge of related singulars, these singular events that their association of images and their estimative sense and everything, they learn how to line up for a given result, but they don't know the means to the means, the end to the ends. We demonstrated that already with the ape on the box. He stood on the box and got the banana, but when he got the cardboard, he did the same thing because he didn't understand relations. He didn't understand the means and the ends. Spider, the same thing. If you destroy a spider's web, it doesn't have a plan B. It doesn't repair. It just builds another one. It's instinctive, okay? Don't have knowledge of relations, means to an end, means and ends. And fourthly, of course, is so obvious that even the most ardent evolutionists don't try to advance it, and that is that animals do not have knowledge of immaterial objects. Immaterial objects. When is the last time you saw 2 apes talking about religion, talking about patriotism, talking philosophy, talking morality, talking science? You'll notice these so-called animal rights people, the ape never defends itself in court. Some goofy lawyer has to be doing it, right? When the ape defends itself, maybe I'll take animal rights seriously, but they don't have the knowledge of immaterial objects as humans do. So, to conclude, we're going to go through this again. The positive demonstration of the non-intelligence of apes, and there are 4 necessary formal effects of intellect that animals would manifest if they had intellect. We should see true speech, not the matter of speech taught to them by humans with tremendous and just a long training period and very difficult training period. No, true speech. They should make genuine progress. They should be building better dams, building better nests, building things to help them to make life easier. There should be knowledge of relation, cause and effect, means to an end. Understand of a means as a means and as an end to an end. And fourthly, of course, as I said, there should be knowledge of immaterial objects. And Father Woodbury explains that if even one of these formal effects is lacking, then this would prove the absence of intellect. Apes and animals lack all four necessary effects. Therefore, we say with certainty that apes and animals lack intellect. They do not have intellect. What they do have is the association of images, and they understand the image, not the concept. See, they understand. I can't see. I'm anthropomorphic. I'm humanizing. I'm saying they understand. They don't understand. They recognize the image. They see a rabbit, and they know the dog knows it's something to chase. It doesn't say, now an animal that's preyed upon has the eyes on the side of his head, and the predator animals are in the front. That thing has so it's something I can prey upon. So they understand the image, or they respond to the image and not the concept. So the difference between animals and man is vast. God created man with intellect and will that he did not give the animals. This does not mean we can abuse the animals, but we treat them also as part of God's creation. So with that, we will close our section on evolution and move to the Catechism next time.